Next item on the agenda, approval of consent agenda items. Look for a motion for approval of the consent agenda as it's been provided to you this evening.
So moved.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Second.
Thank you, Lori. Any discussion? Any abstentions? Very good. All in favor of approval of the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. Consent agenda is approved. Approval of the minutes from regular open meeting. Oh, sorry. We need to move on down the page there, Steve. Difference makers. Dr. Lithcom, the floor is yours.
Yes, well, we'd like to recognize our difference makers, our vision to be the premier school district in the state. And so we have 3 pillars: learning, partnership, and stewardship. So everything we do goes back to those 3 things. So first one tonight, I believe Sue Haugen and Lori Rost has a presenting underneath our learning pillar. So the floor is yours.
So, I'm gonna stand up. Absolutely stand up. Yeah. Sunshine. So this is Jenny Fox. And Jenny Fox is someone you all should know. She joined our staff in late December, really, helping to really make some plans for success as we implemented our behavior support room. She has just been an essential piece of that process, in teaching those social skills to students, providing that support, and so I'd like to share with you the difference maker nomination. Jenny believes in our students. She worked with a student who, according to the iReady scores, was far below level. She worked with him to develop a plan to complete the assessment so he would be sure to do his very best. After completing his testing, he showed 700% increase and was at the mid-5th grade level. Absolutely amazing. And the way that we opened that up, we brought in the laptop, opened it up, brought everyone together in the office, had a little moment ourselves as staff, and then brought him in, and to be able to celebrate that with him, just incredibly powerful. When a student has someone who believes in them and provides support, the child will amaze themselves with what they can do. We appreciate all the love and energy she puts into supporting all of our students. Put you up on stage.
Okay, next is underneath our partnership pillars. Ryan Burns, I believe you're presenting here, our partnership difference makers.
Yes.
The floor is yours.
And I would like to invite our school librarians that are here this evening.
Yes.
If I would like to come on up. I guess I would like to sit down while I read about you, but show your faces. I'd also like to mention that we have a photo slideshow playing in the background of all of our JC Reads activities last week. So,
Twin.
is that everybody? Okay. So towards the end of 2018, several of these ladies in front of you, our school librarians, approached the communications department with a request. They were looking for ways to better market our school libraries to students, staff, and parents, and they wondered if someone from our team might join them at an upcoming professional development day. So me, as a total bookworm and lover of all things reading, I jumped at the chance to spend an afternoon in a library with our district's librarians to learn about the role they play for the district. Throughout the course of our meeting, we talked about the mission of the JCPS Library Media Program, which is to encourage a love of reading and libraries in each student through collaboration with educators, curating a diverse collection, and teaching the effective use of information. We also, did I get that right, ladies? We also talked about ways they could communicate their message to students, staff, and partners like parents and community members, and develop a marketing plan to help accomplish some of their short and long-term goals. So as we brainstormed together, it was mentioned that Missouri Reading Day was coming up in March, and there was unanimous consensus among the group that launching an annual JC Reads Week to coincide with Mo Reading Day would be a great way for them to test out their new marketing ideas. This would also be a natural fit for the librarians and communications department to work together as we elevate our district reading initiative. I have to tip my hat to these ladies because they put a ton of time and effort into reaching out to community groups like the Missouri River Regional Library, Scholastic, and Downtown Book and Toy. They organized ways to creatively celebrate reading at every grade level within our schools. They created marketing materials and graphics, and they came up with a plan that could be executed and elevated in partnership with our district communications team. Reading builds community. We're all on the same page. This statement became abundantly clear as we celebrated JC Reads Week throughout the district and across the community last week. Superintendent Larry Linthicum read to students at Thorpe Gordon. Jefferson City Mayor Carrie Turgeon issued a proclamation declaring drop everything and read time during Mo Reading Day. Lieutenant Governor Mike Kehoe read to students. DESE Deputy Commissioner Roger Dorson read at South Elementary. Secretary of State and Jeff City High School grad Jay Ashcroft read to first graders at Thorpe Gordon and wowed them with his Braille books. Missouri's own First Lady, Teresa Parson, visited both West and Cedar Hill for a morning full of reading on Friday. Readers came from the Lincoln's men's basketball team, the Jefferson City Police Department, the Missouri State Highway Patrol, and I'm probably missing some if I'm not guessing, yes. Pictures flowed in, as you can see up on the screen, from classrooms across the district at all age levels, from parents reading with students at home. We could barely keep up with all of them in our own platforms. Our own district social media accounts had over 100,000 impressions last week between Twitter and Facebook, and that doesn't include the shout outs that came from our VIP readers who tag JCPS tweets or use the hashtag JCReads. The News Tribune, thank you Philip, helped us, quote, close the book on JC Reads Week by summarizing efforts in an article and video they posted this weekend. JC Reads Week truly became a community celebration and created a week-long reading buzz not just around JCPS, but also all around JC Mo. I would say we achieved our goal of increasing awareness of the importance and benefits of reading, both in school and in the home, as well as in and about the greater Jefferson City community. Not to mention the thousands upon thousands of memories created by our students and our staff members, and those of us here tonight who are lucky enough to observe a reading event or two last week. Today a reader, tomorrow a leader. We all know that reading proficiency is a major factor in determining a child's success in school. The efforts of these school librarians to expand their reach and instill an even greater love of reading in any of our students on any given day, and especially during JC Reads Week, is most definitely worth recognizing. You ladies are difference makers. Great work, mission accomplished. Yes. We have a copy.
I'm here somewhere. I'm diving in, so I'm not in the corner of the pic. Every time I look, I'm never paying attention. I take the picture, I look like an idiot.
Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. And 16 pictures later. Thank you. Pick the right person.
Good job.
Good job. Thank you.
Nice job, guys.
Lori and I are sitting up here arguing over who had the best book to read, so I think
I don't know.
Grandpa's-
I read The Lady with the Alligator Purse. This is
Wonky
pretty good.
Donkey is the best orange.
my grandpa's sweater, it was a new one, it's a great book.
It was a good one.
I ordered it as soon as I got done.
I would like to, as they work their way out, our librarians and our entire staff, as we see JC Reads there on the back, our staff on our first day with our staff, our picture up here at Atkins Stadium is in JC Reads, making that a reality. So the awareness, it does take a village to raise a child, so it's been neat to see the awareness and our folks working on that. So anyway, thank you to everyone that's been a part of that. So We do not have a stewardship recognition, so we're on to our next
Okay.
report.
All right. Moving on, we have Mr. Mike Reed present
here.
this evening. Good deal. Welcome, Mike. Mike's going to bring a legislative update for us. Mike with Missouri School Boards Association. Good to have you
Welcome.
again.
Thank you. Thank
Hi,
you.
Mike.
Two things. Man, you put me on behind what a good group. Man, that's just, that's
Yeah,
a
you're gonna
hard
have to
act to
deliver.
follow. Let me
Yeah.
tell you that and talk about legislation. Gee whiz, guys. And the other thing, appreciate the opportunity, because when I come out and I get to see all the neat things that schools are doing, and it kind of, reinvigorates me to go back and to talk about what we do, and to keep remembering it's about the kids, and that's where we're going. It's about the kids. So it's been an interesting session. We're about halfway through. Come Thursday, we will be halfway through the session, and it's been a tough one for education. Lots of things are popping. And I'm going to start with the first thing, which I always hate to start with, but it's the budget. I hate to start talking about money first, because people think that that's all school people do is talk about money, and it's not all we do. But it's unfortunate that we have to have money to keep things running. The foundation formula, the governor has asked that it be fully funded. It looks like it probably will be funded. He asked for an increase of $10 million in transportation, as the House today was working on the budget. That has been cut down to $5 million. We still are low on transportation. We're about 17% right now. We're supposed to be at 75%. So we get with one hand and not with the other hand. Things will be tight for the next couple of years. There's a lot of question on money coming in and money going out. And so I think that I don't anticipate the governor will have to do withholds, but I do think we have to be very careful with the tax money that is coming into the state of Missouri. One of the big things that's going on right now is the question on school choice, charter schools, ESAs. Charter school expansion is under two bills. One bill, House 581, Senate Bill 292. House Bill 581 may be taken up as early as tomorrow. 292 may be taken up this week, perhaps when they come back from spring break. Both of these bills expand charter schools. They expand them into any charter county, which is Jackson, the counties around St. Louis, counties around Kansas City, into any city with a population of more than 30,000, and in any district where a charter school has applied to the local school board for sponsorship, and the local school board has turned it down, and then it goes to the Charter School Commission for starting. So it could be any school district in the state. This bill also includes an open enrollment part for any student who wishes to go to a charter school. The sending district has to pay that tuition. MSBA's policy, of which all of you belong, and our policies are voted on by our members, states that we're not against charter schools. I want everybody to understand they are public schools, but we believe that all public schools should be held to the same accountability standards. So charter schools and other public schools have to be held to the same accountability standards, and all charter schools should be sponsored by the local elected school board. It's pretty simple, and we keep arguing that, and we'll see how it keeps going. We keep telling people that's our position, and that's where we are. ESAs, educational savings accounts, are what they are, tax credits for scholarships. The ESA in the Senate is Senate Bill 160. ESA in the House is House Bill 476. The ESA in the Senate is a $25 million tax credit. The ESA in the House is a $50 million tax credit. This is just exactly what it says. It's, you pay X amount of money, someone can donate up to whatever they want. They get a tax credit, and then the group they give it to is a 501c3 scholarship granting group. That group then gives scholarships to students to attend private schools, home schools, etc. Position of MSBA is that those schools are not accountable to local elected officials, and they're not responsible to educate all the students who come in the door. And in fact, it's a drain on the Treasury. A $25 million tax credit is just that, a $25 million drain on the treasury. A $50 million is a $50 million drain on the treasury. And
If
as
I can
you,
interrupt real quickly, this is not the first time we've seen that proposal.
no,
correct?
no, these bills have been around for several years. Yes. And you thought that you were the only ones talking about school start dates, or school start times. We get to talk about school start date. And that's been something that's been going on for a number of years. As you know, the law presently says that school districts can only start 10 days before Labor Day unless the district has had an open hearing and published notice, and at that hearing then determines they wish to start earlier than that. The bill that passed out of the House committee and is on the House calendar says that no school can start earlier than 14 days prior to Labor Day. So it's a solid date of the earliest you can start is 14 days prior to Labor Day. This year, I can't remember exactly. I can tell you the 20th is the latest that Labor Day is, and but the earliest that you could start would be August the 24th. We believe that school start date is a local issue. The local school board is the person who should be making that determination. This is being pushed by the tourism industry and the floating industry. It's a real question. But we believe the local board and the local elected officials best know when to start school. What's appropriate in Jefferson City may not be appropriate in Kansas City, or what's appropriate in Malden may not be appropriate in Maryville. So we are still going to keep working on that, and please let your representative know how you all feel. There's a really interesting bill that's out there right now, House Bill 445. It is the Senate and the House it's through the House. It is their idea of making Clean Missouri apply to local elected officials. As you know, Clean Missouri was passed by the people of Missouri and puts a limit on contributions, puts a limit on the amount of money that lobbyists can pay at any individual time for an elected official. What this bill does is puts a limit on you all as elected officials, and no more than $5 per day can be spent by a lobbyist on you for any situation. It also covers your spouse, your dependent children, your staff, and your employees. There's a problem with the language, though, because while you all may have a staff here of employees, Lord, you may have a staff of your own employees back at work at your real job outside of this. And does that say that lobbyists then can't buy anything for that staff? It says it's a blanket against all lobbyists. Now, this gets really confusing because there are 4 types of lobbyists, and I won't go into the whole situation. It's just that it's out there. It also would say that once you all leave your position here, for 2 years you can't register as a lobbyist. Not sure you'd want to, but it's out there as that situation. If you really want to register as a lobbyist, let's talk about it, because Ken can talk about that.
How do we get lobbyists to spend money on this?
That's right. And I'll talk about how Ken can do this in a minute. There's a bill out there, House Bill 743 and 673, which is called the Cronkite New Voices Act. This also has been out there for a period of time. It expands student free speech rights. And what it does, it limits school districts' ability to monitor and control student publications. It was written as a result of a case that came from Hazelwood a number of years ago, dealing with a student publication, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court on how much the school could censor a student publication. This takes all the bars off of the majority of what happens, and the concept is interesting. We're not trying to stop kids in free expression and free speech. That is not, so when the press behind me is going after this, that's not what we're saying. Everybody in the newspaper business, or radio and television, has an editor, and they have a publisher. And there comes a point in time that the editor or the publisher says, whoa, we got to move back a little bit. We just want to make sure that we don't get sued for some of the things that could be printed. So there's a really good bill that has just cleared the House. It's House Bill 462. It's teacher externship. It allows teachers to do an externship, to be encouraged to do an externship with various businesses in the community. And so they could sit in the summertime, go through, the business would get a couple of tax breaks on it. The individual would see how what they're doing and what the business and community affects workers, teachers, etc. And so it's a really good piece of program. Plus the fact that when you go finish the externship, the hours that you get help you with the salary schedule. So you get to bump up on the salary schedule. Senate Bill 218 is an ag education bill. It's a really interesting bill. It pushes DESE to have a pilot program in 16 school districts for elementary schools to have ag education. So we need to keep developing kids and their attitudes and know about agriculture in the state of Missouri, which is the #1 business in this state. Other bills that we have, House Bill 363 is a public funding bill. It came out very early. It says you cannot use public funds to support a ballot measure or candidate. That's always been the law. This puts some more regulations upon it. It actually is a very prescriptive bill and stops people from, school board members perhaps, from making presentations in front of committees in front of the Missouri General Assembly. So it's a bill to worry about. House Bill 361, Ken testified for us on that. It was moving the election date, for school boards from April until November. That bill, because of Ken's excellent,
Sure, that was it.
it hasn't come out of committee yet, so she did a great job in doing it.
Yeah.
We believe very, moving the election to November would lose where we are. April elections are municipal elections. They're the elections of the people and the people who run closest to running things in your community. There's a House Joint Resolution, and I'll finish up very quickly. House Joint Resolution 19, which has come out of committee, and it would change the date that you could do tax elections until from the only date that you could do a tax or a levy election would be the November election on a general election. So it would be every other year, which would hamper districts, especially if they need, throw Joplin in, and when they needed to have, after the tornado, they needed to have an election for the bond issue that they had. It would require it to be the general election of the next year. Then there's also Senate Bill 271, which changes charter school language and changes the overseeing of charter schools from DESE until the Charter School Commission. It also takes away certain funds, and it sits outside the Missouri Constitution. So that's just the highlights of a lot of the bills we have. We're monitoring about 450 bills right now, and it's fun. Some days are more fun than others, but I appreciate all of your opportunities to help. I appreciate the members here stepping up and testifying for us at various times, and we're here to answer any questions at any time now, or when you see a bill going through, or you have a question on what's happening, call me. I will get back to you. And again, the thing we have to keep remembering, and the thing we have to keep talking to the legislator, it's about the kids. What are they doing to affect student education in this state? Anybody have any questions?
Okay. Questions for Mike?
Thank you.
You haven't been busy at all, have you?
No. He's
Doesn't sound like it.
Thank you, Mike.
We
Thank
appreciate
you.
your efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good representation. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Next item of business is an update from our Chief of Learning, Ty Branchendorf.
All right, good evening. I want to give you some additional information from our last meeting. We discussed the cell phone policies, and one of the things I heard you say is let's get some more input from our staff and let's be sure that we're headed in the right direction. So last week, we sent out a survey to our staff and to collect some information. We received 553 responses from our staff. We asked them 5 questions, and here's how they responded. Question 1 was, do you believe allowing students to have their cell phones out in the classroom causes a disruption to the learning environment? 95.1% of our staff said yes.
Wow.
Question 2, do you believe students should be allowed to have their cell phones out during class time? 95.5% no. Question 3, do you believe there is a need for students to use their cell phones to support student learning in the classroom? 91.5% said no. Do you believe students should be allowed to use cell phones in the hallways or during lunch? 50% said no, 50% said yes. Do you believe Jeff City Public Schools should develop a district-wide policy related to cell phone usage by students? 92% yes. So I think it's very clear that our staff are asking that we establish guidelines and protocols for the use of cell phones, at least in the classroom, if not the building-wide. And so, strangely enough, that last week, I asked Stephanie to reach out to MSBA to see if they had any language, and in that process, they came back and said that they show that our policy JGR, which has the language in there about personal device usage, was actually up for to be updated. They provided us that language. Actually, there's a lot of language in JGR that needs to be updated, and so nice thing is that we're not going to need to create that language ourselves, that we do have MSBA's recommendation for that language. So I think our next step then will be to take JGR policy to the policy committee, Ken, for the committee to review. And if the committee approves that policy or brings it to the board and it's approved, then I think our next steps then will be to get staff around the table to have conversations about not the policy, because that'll be clear for us, but what are the administrative procedures, what are the expectations, and what is the language going to be in the student handbooks. And so that'll be the work that we do once this policy is approved.
Will you also outline consequences?
Yeah, so actually MSBA does that for us. In JGR, they outline the consequences, and so they range anywhere from an initial conference with administration all the way up to, if it's repeated offenses, all the way up to confiscating that device until a parent can pick it up, or even suspension from school. So MSBA outlines those consequences
Okay,
for us.
great.
So who did you, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So who did you survey? Was it kindergarten through 12th grade teachers or just high school or middle school?
We surveyed all staff, and so we had 32.5% elementary respond of the 100%, 32.5% elementary, 27.1% high school, 24.6% middle school, 2.2% Nichols, and 13.6% other. So we had paraprofessionals and cooks and custodians. So we gave the survey to every staff member in the district.
So what was that total number? You said you had 553
553 total responses,
Out of?
Out of how many?
1,400.
1,400, okay.
But the survey went to every staff member.
All right.
And of those 553, approximately half of them were secondary teachers, is that secondary and elementary?
Correct.
Approximately?
Half of them were
Okay.
secondary. So we didn't anticipate the elementaries because they're really not as big of an issue at elementary, so not as much of a response from elementary, mostly secondary. I will tell you that we also left an additional comment that said, is there anything additionally you want to share with district officials? And so of the 553 total responses, there were an additional 402 comments made back to us. And so I've begun the process of reading those comments. I can tell you that in general, it's comments about the rationale for why they don't believe they should be used, or but there are a lot repeated comments from our staff that cell phones are a distraction in the building, and not just in the classroom, but also the fact that even times when in passing, times in the cafeteria, the social media and the comments that are being made and the the communication that's taking place then carries over into the next class, and they got to deal with it because they have kids arguing. So just a lot of comments, but we'll take all those 402 open comments to heart when we begin to look at what is the language that we're going to apply in our handbooks. I will tell you that there is a lot of those 402 comments where staff members have concerns that they believe it's the right thing to do and they want policy, but they are concerned about the fallout for this type of expectation from students and from parents, and so that's something we'll have to deal with. But we will.
And I might just remind, we are one-to-one, so all of our 6 through 12 students have a school-issued electronic, either
Correct.
Chromebook
Yes.
or iPad. So they have electronic device that is provided for each of those, so.
So any other questions about that? Or the next steps?
Next steps, I think you outlined those well. We look for the policy committee to take that up. Those responses are not all that surprising, I don't think, but, well,
Have we reached out to any other districts who might have implemented a policy broadly that, made a major change like this to kind of find out the things they might do differently, the pitfalls?
Morgan County just did one, didn't they? Morgan County just,
I have not, but that's certainly something that
I'm just curious if we,
we'll be willing to do.
kind of like we did when we talked about the second high school. I know we, I think, got some valuable information from hearing feedback from districts that had made that transition, and I would hope that maybe we could get some helpful insights.
Yeah, and I think that once we decide as a district exactly what our language is going to be, whether we're going to say that there are cell phones can be, and I want to say to the public, we are not proposing that we're going to come back and say that cell phones are not allowed at school. Certainly, children are going to be allowed to have their cell phones at school. The question at hand is, when should they be used, or if they should be used? And so our language is going to, once we decide, are we going to allow them to be used in passing or cafeterias and that, then to determine how do we implement that. A lot of our staff said that concerns about we can create a policy, but without support and implementation, it's going to be a worthless policy. So we need to do it and do it right. So.
sure. No, good comment, good questions. I think the process that you all utilize to develop the boundary review policy, good process there. And yeah, if you could run those traps and pull some of that information for the committee, so we can have that available for discussion, that'd be great.
Okay,
Any
thank
other
you.
questions for Brian?
Thank you.
Thank you,
Brian.
sir, for the report. Moving on, update from our CFO, COO, Mr. Jason Hoffman.
So you're going to be hearing from me later about the budget, so I'll just wait to report then unless you have any questions about other parts.
Any questions for Jason at this
we
point?
hear you 2 different times.
What's that?
We don't get to hear you 2 different times.
Well, we'll have 2 agenda items, so just 2 instead of 3.
That counts. Thanks, Jason.
All right, thank you, Jason. Appreciate it. Dr. Lincomb, your report.
Yeah, I'll just give you a couple updates on our 3 pillars. Number 1, just our learning. We're continuing on with our able tutors. We have volunteers in the community that tutor our middle school kids, and it's something I've been a part of as well. It's going very well. I want to encourage folks in the future to, if they're looking for volunteering opportunities, the JC Reads, our not really a campaign, it's real. We want to make sure that literacy, how important that is. So that's taking place. Bus 22 I drove last week, had my eyes open a little bit there. We finished with our start times. With South was our last one. Our last board meeting was on the 25th, and we met with them on the 26th. Buddy packs. I took a student from one of our elementary schools who didn't have an appreciation for the buddy packs like some of us would like them to have. So I took them with me, got permission from the mother, and it was eye-opening, I think, for them. Whether it went in one ear and out the other, who knows, but hopefully it had an impact on them. Dr. Merrick Seymour, Dean of Education at Lincoln, had a meeting with them, and they are having a diversity day at Lincoln on the 6th of April on a Saturday, and asked that I be a part of that. So I'm excited about that, and the bottom line, how we can work stronger together. So we're excited about that for our community and our schools working together. We had a facilities focus group that met on the 7th of March last week, and just looking at options to consider for our pre-K through 8 space needs. When I got here, we had, as I was told, K through 12 overcrowdedness and space needs, and as we know, we've addressed the 9 through 12 So just looking at options moving forward with that. So we're excited about that. And then the stewardship piece, Jefferson City and Capital City, we are on time and under budget. So we are excited about that. So that's kudos to Jason Dale. Thanks for being here. Dale kind of oversees the high school projects there with the renovations there. So we are super excited about that and looking forward and moving forward.
Steel started going up on the connector, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yay.
Around the storm shelter and the rebar.
Awesome.
Big progress.
Okay.
You know, I'm sure folks probably think I'm a broken record on this, but I don't think you can celebrate that enough. I don't think that you can talk about that enough, because I worked in government for over 20 years and been around projects, any number of different types and sizes. And, you know, the earliest conversation I can remember you having with Namholtz and all of the folks that were involved in this concept, it was, you know, there's not an option. It's going to be on time and it's going to be on budget, if not under budget. I mean, that was always how it's been relayed and what the expectations have been given. And so I think that's a big part of why we're seeing the project move forward like it has been. And just looking forward to continued progress there. But I think that's a great story to be able to tell. Yeah.
Absolutely. And the last thing, would like to recognize in front of you as a board, behind you as far as our patrons, South Elementary, some of their artwork. So kudos to them. They do a tremendous job. It brightens up our room.
Very bright.
And then behind us here or in front of our patrons, this is West Elementary. So we've got South, we got West Elementary. So if you see or know anybody in those schools, give them a thumbs up and we appreciate that. So,
Absolutely.
so that's all I've got.
Thank you.
Thanks, Larry. Good report.
Thank you.
Moving on, future dates. You've got that time of year where the calendar starts filling up with end of year activities. You see spring break. I know a lot of teachers and staff are looking forward to that. Kids as well. You can see the Lewis and Clark 29th anniversary event coming up in a couple of weeks. That should be a great time. And got a couple of Coffee with Larry scheduled here this week. You can see there. And board meetings scheduled. So looking forward to the next several weeks, and it's going to be a busy time. Moving on to old business. Dr. Linscomb, we'll give the floor back to you for start time.
Yes, so I just kind of want to give it we're not going to go through the song and dance or all the different parts to it, because there are a lot of different parts, and we all recognize that, and we don't want to make light of any of those. The board, whether you're on the board or not, considered this earlier 2 different times. I believe the most recent in 2013, 2010 before that, as far as just considering, do we do the change of start times. We started here, and it's on our district website. I think November 12th it was a board agenda item, and as far as just with, you know, where are we looking at this moving forward with the money savings, with that being a part that you should look at. But at the end of the day, what's best for kids and what happens to student learning. And that is our number one goal, is to ensure that all of our students can read, and our pillar of learning being the core of that. So with that, through the feedback at our last board meeting, we basically got your blessing to move forward. We did not take board action, but blessing to move forward with having elementary first and secondary second. But what would that look like? So we had 3 options. Ryan will share those results with you here in a bit. But asking our folks what would work best, but with the decision already of going elementary first. And I know there were some folks that maybe hadn't been a part of 48 different community opportunities, stakeholder input, come in, and then it's like, wait a minute, these are only 3? Well, what's going on? So there was a lot of different parts, and we recognize that, but at the end of the day, what happens to student learning? And what is best for our students from an elementary age to a secondary age, and not just what's best for this year or next year, but over the long haul, and how can we as a community become a premier school district, and what's best for our students. So that's guiding that with our 3 pillars of the learning, partnership, and stewardship was at the core of all of these. I think the aspect of the partnership pillar, through our stakeholder input, a lot of it was about personal preferences. We had many conversations with folks that I can't argue that learning's not important. I can't argue that you're saving money, but this changes my world, that I have to do something differently. Those are real, okay? And you have to have empathy and put yourselves in folks' shoes to try to understand that. And as a parent, 4 kids in the district, myself, other folks, parents in here, those are real, and you don't you know, whatever, they'll get over it. You don't have that attitude, obviously, because it is real. And so working through those, what is other schools that have done this? What happened? What were the results? But most agree. I think most, does this mean all? No. Does that mean everybody in here? No. Most would agree that a change is needed. Jason's going to just touch on how efficient are we currently with our buses. Okay? Nothing to do with whether you feel like they drive too fast or you feel like that they weren't friendly. Are they able to pick up when they say we're going to be here, deliver the student in a timely manner, and be efficient? And those are challenges with our current system, and that's why the district has looked at this in the past. Not with money driving it. Number one, what's it doing for student learning? But you cannot negate, you cannot disregard if you believe student learning will go up. And if that's what we're really about, making decisions of what's best for students, obviously you want to consider your adults, but what's best for students? And that's the core of it. Most would agree that saving close to $500,000 a year is practicing good stewardship. Stewardship is one of our 3 pillars. Most would agree with that. You can't, well, somebody probably would, but you usually can't argue against that, of saving that. And most would, from a secondary standpoint, if it's 835, 840, 845, from a high school standpoint, that attendance will increase for secondary students. Tardiness will decrease. Graduation rates go up, attendance rates go up, as I touched on. The bottom line, it comes down to student learning and operations. Brian, would you just give a highlight of the learning aspect? I know he touched on with the American Association of Pediatrics. With that, just to highlight, we don't need to go through everything we had before, but hit on a couple bullets if you would, please.
Okay, I'll just say this for the public, just based on questions that we had gotten. I know that folks had asked, so why are we relying so heavily on Seattle? What's the big deal with Seattle? And the other question is, what are you gonna do with the money? So I just wanna be clear to the public and to you that the reason that most people talk about Seattle is because it's one of the most recent studies. It was a very significant study, but more importantly, it's because it's one of the more recent ones, and that's why everybody's been talking about it. But I want to assure everyone that we're not basing our academic decision here just on what happened in Seattle, Washington. These studies have happened across this country with hundreds of thousands of students, with countless researchers from very prominent universities, Auburn, Harvard, Yale, Cambridge. I mean, these are studies that have taken place over a long period of time with hundreds of thousands of kids. And so it's not just Seattle. It's if you go in and look at the research, you can find studies that happen in Boulder, Colorado, Jackson Hole, Wyoming, Minneapolis, Chicago, Lexington, Kentucky, Rhode Island, North Carolina. There was even a study done with the U.S. Air Force. They did it with their freshman class in their academy in California. So the studies are not just, or the research we're sharing is not just based on what happened in Seattle. These are studies that have happened all over. They've even happened in Germany and Sweden, Norway. These studies have taken place. And the significant thing about it is in all of the studies, they come back. They all come back with some slightly different percentiles. So they might come back and say that attendance moved 4%. Another study comes back and says 3%. The percentiles don't all come back, but there are some very universal things that come back from all of these studies. And these are the things that are universal in all these studies. When they do it, researchers find that our students do sleep more. They found that there were fewer tardies, there's better attendance, there's better student engagement, there's improved grades, there are fewer disruptions, there are fewer crashes, we've talked about that, there's increased graduation rates, and the most significant change happens with our disadvantaged students. And I would say that's significant here in Jeff City because we are 60% free and reduced. We have a large population of students that we would consider disadvantaged. And so we stand to greatly support the majority of our students by making this decision.
Can I ask for clarification? So Brian, was it correct that we're not saying starting an hour later, they'll get an hour more sleep? I think the research was 34 minutes.
And so that's one of the things that if you look at the research, some will come back and say, well, the students got 34 minutes. Some come back and say they got 28. Some come back and say they got 40. So you'll see differences in those times. We are not claiming that by putting our start times, what we're proposing, that our students are going to get an hour more sleep. What we're proposing is they will get more sleep. Here's what we do know, and this is one that comes from Mr. Hoffman quite often. If we do nothing, we can guarantee that they're not going to get more sleep. If we make this decision, we're not promising they're going to get another hour, but according to the research, making a change of an hour, we're likely to see somewhere between 28 to 38 minutes of additional sleep. I know a lot of our people in our community said, well, this is not true. Our students have told us that they're just going to stay up later. We can say that all day long, folks, but research after research after research states that it just simply isn't true, that they actually do sleep longer. So with that, I would just say this, that making the decision to align our start time, secondary being at the same time and elementary going at the same time, that decision is really tied to money, because by doing that, you can do the tiered routing and we can save $500,000. So that's about money. Putting the elementary schools first and the second, that's a decision about student learning. That's about academics. That decision in itself is what it's going to take for us to help support our students with getting more sleep and fewer tardies and better attendance and better graduation. That's the decision that is significant in terms of the academic side. And so I hope that we take that serious. We just heard Mike Reed say, it's all about the kids. And so I just hope that we just remember that our decisions are all about the kids. I know we have a lot of adults that have expressed concerns about this, and most of those concerns are about what you just said, Dr. Lithcom, and that is how it's going to affect our schedule and our timing and our budget. But the truth is this, we have research that shows that we can help support our students, and it's a decision that may not be easy, but it's a decision I think we need to do for our students. And then just lastly, there have been questions about, so what are you going to do if you save $500,000? What are you going to do? You're just going to use it up on something else. I said to you last month that a proposal that would love to bring to the Board of Education, I think you'll talk a little bit more about it later tonight, is that we have invested an incredible amount of money, time, energy, professional development into our elementary schools in terms of reading. All the information you just heard about JC Reads, it's exciting to see that, all the momentum we're getting behind JC Reads. And that's happening at the secondary level as well. But we've invested a lot of time and energy at the elementary level, and we're seeing results. We haven't done so well at the secondary level, but we have the ability. We are looking at our middle school programming right now. We have a lot of middle school kids who are below grade reading level. We currently teach reading and writing within the same block. All of those standards, all the reading standards and all the writing standards, are put together into one block. There's an incredible amount of information to share, to get taught in one course. Those teachers will tell you that. So what we want to do is separate reading and writing, and so students would have 5 blocks. They would have the math, science, social studies, reading, and writing as a separate course. So 50 minutes a day for reading and 50 minutes a day for writing. We believe it's the right thing to do for kids, but doing that right thing is going to require, obviously it's going to require additional staff, but we've worked with the middle school principals and we believe that we've got that narrowed down to requiring 7 additional staff to make that happen, which is pretty amazing considering there'd be 36 of them in total. But for 7 additional staff, we believe that we can make that model work, and we believe it's the right thing to do for our middle school students. That comes out to right around $412,000 in salaries. And so what would we do with the money instead of giving it to the buses? We'd support our student learning. That's what we would do. So.
Thank you, Brian, on that. I want to touch on that. You have here in front of you, just from NEA, I know David Gainey, one of the district-wide NEA reps, had shared that they recommend starting your secondary schools after 8:30, and so that's just some information on that. Anybody can Google start times NEA and give you that information. Eldon, we've talked on, Brian referenced different ones. We'll just go very local. Eldon moved from 8 o'clock start to 8:30, and their attendance through the end of February a year ago was at 93.5%. And this year, when they've gone from 8 to 8:30, and they notified their patrons in the end of July that they were going to do this, by the way. I can't imagine doing that here. I get skinned. But they were able to do that. Their attendance has gone up from 93.5% to 96%. And our attendance last year was 93.86. Jason figured today, if we went up 2% instead of 2.5% like Eldon, he would bring 1.1 million additional money in our formula. Nothing to do with the 500,000, $500,000 there. So it's about the kids, but you look at that stewardship pillar as well, and if our attendance would go up, that is potential. That's being a good steward of patrons' money. So that was something that was a part of that I wanted to touch on. Brenda, would you just kind of give a summary of the daycare, please?
Trust me to be brief. Practically.
You are very thorough and you're awesome, but I
Thank
just
you.
wanted a summarized version.
Apparently not brief is usually not my word. That's all right. I'll do my best.
We
So-
can always add that, you know.
I'm
Okay,
writing it
so I will
down.
stop.
Brief with Brenda.
Brief with Brenda,
Brief
got
with
it. Okay, so.
Coffee with Larry, brief with Brenda?
Brief with Brenda, there we go.
I'm sorry,
Okay,
go
so, now you've made it go longer. Boys and Girls Club and Y-Care are two primary after-school and before-school providers. They've both been in great partners with us for years and years and years, and we're very thankful for that. As I reported last time, every single one of our schools is either covered by one or sometimes both of those entities. What I think is most fascinating and most exciting is the number of free spots that both of them have. So Boys and Girls Club, everything they do is free if you're on free or reduced lunch, and then God love them, they raise money to have a number of scholarships for those families who are right there on the cusp, or even families who have difficult situations that are just a spot in time, if you will. Y-Care, I don't know if they told you tonight, but they actually provide 25% of their slots are actually scholarship slots. So I think that's pretty darned exciting as well. And then we have the great community outreach of all the 65 daycares that serve a variety of capacities in our district. And of those, as I reported last time, they range from $20 a week to $52 a week. And the 52 is actually somebody who does before and after school care. And so we don't anticipate, regardless of what we do with start and end times, any of those people not doing exactly what they're doing now, plus. Every single person we talk to is willing to take on more and is willing to serve more folks, either with before school or after school care, which I think is a testament to our community and the number of people who really want to support the district and want to support our students. Did I forget anything?
Nope, I
Can I
think
ask
that's
a
awesome.
question?
Please.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so I know Ms. Keever gave us these
Yes.
numbers and showed each school and what their capacity is.
Yes.
Can you speak to what those numbers actually look like today? Like who's full, who's not? We have extra spots here or there.
So what I've been told, and the only reason I'm hedging on that is because I know that their numbers change.
Sure.
So I know that Lawson is currently full and they were looking for they would like to get a 4-year degree person so they could expand that.
Okay.
Pioneer Trail for what Boys and Girls Club do, because it's landlocked, if you will, because they're moving people.
Right.
They would have to get more
Okay.
bus capacity to be able to help them. But Stephanie has spots at Pioneer Trail, so we have some spots there.
Okay.
So there are no spots for Boys and Girls Club, I'm sorry, for Y-Care at Lawson. There are a ton of spots at Thorpe Gordon, and that's because Thorpe Gordon is served by both Boys and Girls Club and by Y-Care. So they're the one who has probably the most spots out of everybody that is still out there. Then, let's see, I have to look at my list. Morrow Heights has a few spots. West has a couple. We're talking less than 10 for most of these. Bel Air is full, and Cedar Hill is full at this point. But
Okay.
everybody's willing to expand if we're willing to help them find a 4-year degree person.
And that's something that we're prepared to do.
I think we're prepared to help them ask. I mean, they're willing to pay our staff members, and what we've talked about is trying to help them recruit. We have never actively recruited for a staff member to help them.
Okay, so what do we have to do? So if they're licensed capacity, let's just use Bel Air, it's the first one on the list and happens to be where my kids go. So if they're at 60.
So they could go to 100.
Okay.
If they have a 4-year degree person who is their site director. And all that person has to do is be there half the time that it's open. So if it's open 3:30 to 5:30, 5 days a week, you could presumably work 3 of those days. Or you could work half of each of those. What Y-Care explained to me, and I'm pretty sure Stephanie said the same thing, their big issue is they want you there to actually interact with the kids and interact with the families and to make sure that things are going smoothly. So it's not you get to sit in your room and not do anything job. It really is a job where you get to interact with students. And we think we have staff members who would enjoy that.
Okay.
And who would enjoy the additional funds. We have people who, shockingly enough, are standing in line to get the chance to be the person who's there 15 to 30 minutes early, the paras and those sorts of things. So we anticipate that there'll be people who will be interested in an extra paycheck from Stephanie and or our friends at Y-Care.
I just want to make sure, so like in my situation, I'll be one of those parents who now needs to figure out an early morning or after school care because we've adjusted our schedule to a 9 to 4. It's going to be new. We'll have to do something different. And I would hate to be one of those parents on the list that said, hey, sorry, we don't have room.
Yeah.
So
they're very interested in expanding.
Okay.
I did not have any, you would happily expand. in
Yeah,
this.
and actually with that 4-year degree person, you can be licensed for 100 plus.
Okay.
There's no cap.
got it. Thank you.
So that's the exciting part. And again, I do think we have staff. It's $20 an hour. Am I right?
22.
Okay, sorry,
Whenever
20-ish.
she gets
I
done.
said 30 last time and I got in trouble.
I've got two when she gets
anyway,
done.
So it's 22, but I think their pay is comparable for either
She's
program.
not, she's gonna keep.
And both of them were highly excited about it. They were like, do you think you can help us recruit? And I was like, well, I'll talk to anybody. And he's like a great salesman, so I'm sure he could talk some people into it.
Scott's got a couple questions.
Sorry,
I got two.
I'll
So,
do my level best.
all right, so middle school, I don't see that on here. I know we've had some parents reach out to us and also in the surveys and the stuff you see. What are we gonna do about to help the middle school kids, the 6th and 7th and 8th graders who might need the after school? Because I've not heard anything about that.
After school or before school?
Both,
Okay,
both. We got parents that need both.
okay.
So, do we have a plan?
So, Larry, do you want to tell them?
Well, yeah,
your
the
discussions?
before school, we have some options, the YMCA and the Boys and Girls Club, as far as from 7 to 8:15, before school. And then we feel confident that we'll be able to work that out before school. The after school, I would say with what we currently have, we don't think there'll be as much demand if they're getting done at 3:45 versus if it was 2:50 this year, being going an hour later. But we do anticipate a need there, and that, I think we would take some that are currently serving the after school to be able to provide the same that we do right now.
So right now, only Boys and Girls Club serves after school at the middle school level. They have folks at the club, and then they have a STEAM program, which the grant is ending at both middle schools, which is 25 or 30 kids?
Yeah, I mean, there's just not that many middle
Yeah.
schoolers that want after-school programming.
Yeah, but you never know what
But
this might.
Before school will be a big issue, and so that's kind of where we're looking at shifting our focus. is
Sure.
that before school.
There's like options for everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
So we do have some options. At least we'll probably actually end up with more options for middle school after school than we actually have now.
So my second question is that Stephanie, you guys have that great scholarship program. How do people who don't know about it, how can we as a district make sure that these people qualify, who do qualify, don't realize they do? How can we get that out?
So for most of our buildings, now I have not looked at all of them, but I did look at several of them, it's in their handbook, our
Right.
after-school options. Now,
But hold on a second. Does everybody read the handbook?
well, no.
They sign off that they do.
They're supposed to sign
I
off.
just sat through a 4-day conference on rules. You think everybody reads the rules at a
I-
golf tournament? No. So,
But I also think, though, that our school secretaries are, as a general rule, very helpful at
I understand
finding.
that.
So, now,
But-
if people don't read, I don't know how to fix that, and if they won't ask the secretary.
But perhaps at registration, we could provide
There we
some
go.
information.
Absolutely.
Ms.
Johnson,
There
Ms.
could be a
Johnson,
booth
you
for
have
that.
what about if we
Possibly have
publicized it on the
representation.
website, did all
yeah.
kinds of stuff like that, sent it out to the people
Flyer on
before,
boards.
and just
Yeah.
kill them with data
We will allow Ryan to launch a huge campaign.
Correct. Good.
inundate them with data? Okay.
I will just speak for what Bel Air does at registration and open house and anytime we get a new family. We have a list of providers before and after school because we're a school who have parents who need both before and after school care.
Sure.
So we have our printed list that we have out and people contact and call and things, so.
And the Welcome Center
I don't
also
see how
has,
that would be any different.
I understand that. I just want to make sure that people who don't understand that they do qualify, that they can find a way that they can qualify to
And-
get the scholarship.
yeah.
Because I didn't know you provided the scholarship until last meeting, and I'm on the school board, so if I don't know, how
What
is
about
some other people?
And to be honest, I was surprised that the YMCA had 25% of their slots were scholarship slots. So I thought that was very exciting as well.
Thank you.
I think it's a identified area that we can educate better and make as a priority
Sure.
going forward.
I think that's a really good point, Scott. We also spent a lot of time talking about the demographics and the fact that a lot of our kids are free and reduced. And so they, whatever we can do to try to use various channels and put that information out to make it more accessible and
Right.
more easily found.
To help the kids on the fringe.
Yep.
Exactly.
That's the ones we got to
That's
make
right.
sure we take care of here.
Yep.
Excellent.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, great point.
Anything else from me? It
I
wasn't
don't
brief.
believe so.
All right.
No, it's
you.
perfect, thank you.
Wasn't very
Gary,
brief, but okay.
Jeff City High School has not always been starting at 8 o'clock, and so Gary was just gonna give a quick overview, if you would, Gary, on the times there. The high school had started at a certain time, not unintended as in for a period of, at 8:30, and was able to experience success.
I don't have all of those details. I know we have several JC alum in here, and as far as start times, I know when I taught the freshman building in 97 and 98, the best information I have, again, I didn't have it, couldn't find it in my office anywhere, is before the block schedule and the later start times, and went to 3:30ish, Scott?
It was 8:30 to 3:30.
So it's not totally a new concept from what graduates have told me. You know, Larry talks about the word premier all the time, and he often follows that up with, people might define premier differently. And when I think about being premier, I look at it in three areas. For a long time, I've been talking about, in conversations with others, about what is a quality education, what is a premier education. Really, to me, it falls under three categories. Three categories all fall under my umbrella. They also fall in a lot of other people's umbrella. But it's curricular, which is your academics, your co-curricular, which is your fine arts, and your extracurricular, which is your athletics. And to me, we want to be premier in all three areas. And, you know, in the areas of co-curricular, we want all of our music groups getting ones at state competitions. We want participation rates going through the roof to where Jason has to buy more uniforms and more instruments and more flags. And we want our extracurriculars going to Final Fours, winning state championships. That's being premier, and with my definition. But the most important one is curricular. I define premier and curricular as being how many national merit scholars is Jefferson City High School and soon to be Capital City High School putting out? What's our average ACT scores? Are we rocking that, and is it through the roof? That's not the only measuring stick. Some might say, just help my kid get through high school. That might be premier for some, but you all know the message that I'm sending. And if we can do something systematically to make that better, then I think we've got to do that. You know, just, you talk about the attendance thing, you can do an APR by building. And in grades 9 through 12, we've been getting 0 out of 10 points for attendance. Now, as a district, we get some attendance points when you take into that consideration. And so it's hard to teach when they're not here. And so, you know, I talk about systematically. You heard David Gainey speak earlier about the 7-period day. Teachers, in conversations with administrators through the years, not just this year, have been begging, saying they don't have enough time to teach the content and teach it well. I know that's not an agenda item, but if we can do things systematically to put our students and our staff in a position to be successful with research-based start times and more instructional time throughout the year with a 7-period schedule, those are things that we can do systematically to become premier.
Thank you, Gary. Jason, will you touch on real quick the stewardship piece?
So I think the money's been covered pretty extensively, that making the change, we save $150,000. If we don't make a change, we're gonna spend $350,000 more. So there's $500,000 a year. And Brian mentioned when we come to the budget for next year, as we talk about that, there's gonna be a line that shows a savings of $150,000 because of this change. And there's gonna be a line that shows an increase of $12,000 for extra teachers at the middle school. And so all of that goes together. It's not, we're gonna take this money and spend it on transportation or save it. We can actually put it to work. I did want to mention one other thing that we're looking at the middle school level, though, is to bring on an activity bus at the middle school level. And we think we can do it through a tier. And so students that participate in activities at the middle school levels, a lot of times parents can't come and get them and take them home. But if we offer that activity bus, we hopefully that participation in after-school activities, that's a spot for kids to go. They're doing something productive, and then we can get them home safely. I think that's another benefit that we can get out of this. And then just the service that we're providing with our transportation. Larry has mentioned that we're kind of putting a square peg in a round hole. I think if we were starting a school district from scratch today, there's no way we'd come up with our current start times. They just don't make any sense whatsoever. So making a change where all of our elementary schools are at the same time, where we can get cross-district collaboration, it fixes a lot of our service issues by having an adequate amount of time for us to actually run a tiered route busing system like it should be run. It's going to make everything, it'll make it a lot better. It's not going, obviously not going to make it perfect, but
Any questions? Okay, Ryan has the survey results, if you would bring those, and I don't know if we have that in an electronic format to be able to possibly put up here, the results. Okay, if you could please. While they're doing that, we did one aspect of just listening to feedback was changing from the high school to go before the middle school. Some of the options that we had shared initially, we had the middle school starting at 8:45, high school at 8:55, and then the other option, if they were going first, of the 7:55, middle school's 8:05. So we changed from a standpoint of more high school students are involved in activities after school, and more high school students are working after school. So the 8:35 start, for example, of option A, has them finishing at 3:35, is versus before when we were looking at 8:45 or 8:50 or 8:55. So that is one, is in response. And I think our transportation, Frank, if you would confirm here that basically the cost was going to be the same as far as on the savings, whether it's high school or middle school, as far as going first there. So that was in response to that. So we asked basically of the three options what we'd shared. So if you can bring those up, we asked our patrons. I think we had over 2,700 votes. Can you bring those up? They are up, coming up. So option A had 48% of the total votes, and with that, that has elementary school starting at 7:40, high school starting at 8:35, and our middle school starting at 8:45. They have those on there. Okay. Can you guys see that all right? Do I need to turn the light off, or can you see? You can see? Okay.
Yeah.
Can you scroll down a little more so we can see that?
Yeah, they got it broke.
43%. I wanted to see that.
The breakdown?
Whole yeah, that.
Anticipation.
Did that help? Okay.
A summary of this is our elementary folks would have said option C, and our secondary folks would say option A. The 48% being the top vote getter of these three options, and then 39% at option C, I believe. And then option B was 13 or 11, wherever it landed on there.
And if you combine all staff together, it was 57% for option A. That one's not up there.
The secondary folks?
Secondary and elementary.
And elementary,
all
of our staff. Okay,
Mhm.
so of all of our staff, 57%. Okay. So our recommendation is option A, and
What was that time again?
Yeah, do you have the time?
Do you
do we
have
have
the
the
times?
times on that sheet in electronic format?
Elementary was 7:40.
Elementary 7:40, high school is 8:35, and middle school is 8:45. This is option A. Do we have that in anything in electronic format?
We should have had it from the previous
So
meeting.
option A is the earliest and option C is the later time.
Right.
Correct. Of those.
I mean, my concern with A, with the earlier time, is that you've got kids still getting on the bus at, what's the earliest, Jason, I'm sorry, you're typing.
Frank?
Then what's,
6:05 is the earliest for high school, middle school.
Right now, but what we,
What would be,
but with the change.
if it's an elementary only route,
But with
It's an elementary route with the change, these routes should be not even an hour because they're all community based.
So if you start at 7:40, let's say the start.
6:40,
6:40.
it's an hour route, it's gonna be 6:40. And
But that gets them there at 7:40, and it doesn't allow them for breakfast, so that means they're really 6:15, 6:20 then.
they will be anchored at 7:10, meaning that they'll get to school at 7:20. So possibly 6:20. Like I said, I don't see a route being an hour long.
Sure, I understand that.
That would be the exception.
That would be the very.
yeah, that won't be the norm. The norm, 26 minutes is our average, is our average elementary route.
35 minutes, 40 minutes, based on the study we did, about 40 minutes as the longest, but that's not having the enrollment either.
So again, just to clarify, you said, so throwing out the outliers, the average is about 30 minutes, 26, 30 minutes?
26 is the average elementary route.
Okay.
And as we're, right now, that 6:05 has elementary And secondary, I mean, we're having
Sure.
everyone now, the tiered system, it'll be just elementary, so. I mean, the average 26 minutes, so if they're there at 7:20, that's on average, they'll get on the bus at 6:54.
Additional buses
Average.
as well with the elementary going first, where your buses will be out there and then everything else is second tier for middle school, high school. So you'll have additional routes like West Elementary that runs 2 buses now, they'll have 3. And some of the others show East Elementary that would have 3 buses, they'll now have 4. Less population on the bus and shorter.
Shorten the routes. Yeah, you quit typing on us.
Yeah.
They'll teach us.
What did you want us to type?
The other options.
I just want, yeah.
It would be helpful to have the
5
three
minutes
options
each.
displayed.
It was 7:40, 7:45, 7:50.
Add 5 minutes to each
Add
one.
5 minutes to each one. Those were the other times.
Yeah.
But then they all pushed back the high school and the middle schools.
You're talking about a 10-minute difference.
Yeah.
10 minutes when you got 3 kids at 3 different schools.
Oh, I
is a
know.
Big
It
deal.
could make a difference. No pun intended.
Right?
Yeah.
And
Big
we
difference maker.
to be real honest, we talked about that. I mean, of the votes, I mean, when you look at, if it's that, the elementary folks in a sense are C and secondary folks are A, you know, we had discussions,
Thank you.
B, which is in the middle, but it was at 11 or 13%. I mean, it was the,
So if option A, if elementary schools start at 7:40, what time are teachers contracted to be there?
Brian, I'll let you touch on, that is normally an hour. So if we are 30 minutes before and 30 after, it may be 25 before, where it'd be 7:15, and then 35 minutes after. That's what I think Lori, is that where we've kind of laid, we'd like some consistency. That'd be 7:15.
By 7:50, we say that because realistically, if you're gonna do 30 before and 30 after, they could be there at 7:10, but I'm not sure they need to be there that early because it's an early start of school, so we talked about 7:15, and the reason we landed on that is breakfast starts at 7:20 at every elementary school, so we wanted them 5 minutes before breakfast started. So right now, we're going at 7:15 contract.
Is that consistent district-wide? Is that
So
decisions
it's
made
not
at,
now, but it would be.
Because we're all over.
it'd be made at the district level, not at the building level?
Yes.
And we've been asked to make that decision. And it'll be with the input of the elementary principals and with them getting input from their staff. But we originally said, we'll let each building make that decision, and it was loud and clear that no, we want to have consistency.
I would think we should have it district-wide.
Mhm. Additional information to share?
No, these we'd share with you, we would ask our stakeholders, students, staff, parents, community members, and that was that we were fine with all 3 of those options, so we then went to our stakeholders and asked them, kind of no different than once Jason worked out the details with Center School Calendar, and then asked for input after that, kind of the same type of thing here. And so we felt we had the direction to move forward with the blessing of elementary first and secondary second, and then with those options, and these are the results we shared, that we said we would share with you.
Thanks, Larry. So this is an action item tonight, folks, so at this point, if no other information from Dr. Linthicum to share, then I would look for a motion for one of the options as presented.
Before we start, Steve, can we talk about a different option, maybe?
Sure. Sure, if you've got a specific question before.
I'm just asking, I'm not saying I have one if someone wanted to do it.
Sure. No,
What's
that's fine. I'm not opposed to that, but at some point, we need to see if there's a motion out there to be made, and then we can certainly have discussion on the backside of it. You bet.
Sorry.
No, not
I
at all.
mean, can we just discuss, like, I like option C. You're a C?
Do you all prefer you want a straw poll? Yeah.
I'm just curious, I'm just
Can you go
curious
back to
before we
the
go back to the
percentages?
motion.
Can we
Sure.
go back to the percentages of what the votes were?
I just think as you're looking at those numbers, so we've got elementary starting first. The science shows, you know, I think that we're all behind that. We've talked about it. Those kids are gonna get more learning. But at some point too, I mean, that 10 minutes does make a big difference. And if you look at how the elementary parents, teachers, students voted.
I want to see. And all the secondary people went with A. So you're gonna go with, you know what I mean? So a fair is in between, which got the least amount of votes.
That's what I was
That's-
trying.
that's what-
The fair solution is in between, but it got the least amount of votes.
That's exactly the discussion we had. Do you go to where, and I didn't feel like, to be perfectly honest, I could hardly say, this is the bottom vote getter, but I'm recommending it.
Yeah.
That's hard. That's why I asked the question.
I mean, it's
not-
hard
it's a fair-
hard
it's a fair
to discount
question.
57.
I mean, I know why people picked A, so that those secondary students get out earlier. If they do work, they're getting to work in a more timely manner, but that
So-
does put the elementary school kids and teachers
The one thing I would ask you all to remember, Scott, did you have a comment?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
Sure. The one thing I would ask everybody to remember is that this is a big decision. We all know that, but let's not let the perfect be the enemy of the good. I think we can all look at one of those options and say, hey, this is not the best option because of X, Y, or Z. And I think we don't want to lose sight of, I think, what we can accomplish just because it's not, if we don't select one, it's got an issue. Because you could what if it for forever, but I think the options that are presented, I think they're quality ones. So I would just ask us all to keep that in mind.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
What's our rotation time we gotta have? Can you explain that to us again? What we've gotta have? Sorry, guys.
Oh, that's fine.
I wanna know
It's not work.
55 minutes.
what it
between-
takes for a bus.
55 minutes between elementary and secondary. An hour would be ideal, but we can do 55 minutes from a secondary school and an elementary school.
Trying to do math in my
And
head,
all of
sorry.
those, and all of those options have 55
They all have
minutes.
55.
Right.
And the reason, if you think about it, at the elementary, so in the morning is really when we need that time. We don't need as much time in the afternoon because you're picking up at the elementary school and you're running on average 25-minute routes. So we can run it in the afternoon and get to where we need to be in the afternoon with less than an hour. But that morning, you're dropping off at an elementary. Now you're gonna run an hour-long route for a secondary school. So an hour, 55 minutes is gonna push us, and it will eliminate some routes that we can't double because we went from an hour to 55 minutes. And if we go to 50 minutes, there's even more.
How many are we talking about when you say you'll eliminate some that we can't tier?
Well, we went from 55 to 45, and most of them went away. It was
We explored that, the 45-minute difference.
significant.
It was huge.
Yes.
Yeah, we're going to elementary. We looked at 750 for elementary and high school 850, or excuse me, 830. And it was a 40-minute difference.
No
You can't
chance.
do- I mean, you can do a few, yeah,
Right.
Okay.
we tried.
I bet you did.
I really did, but that's,
So the numbers, when you talk about the budget impact, the numbers that you're giving us are based on 55 minutes, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And I think you mentioned last time that was, you went back to first student and said, how tight can this run? You know, what's the most efficient way can you do this? And that's the number they came back with, right?
They really want an hour. We're
Right.
pushing them quite a bit, but 55 minutes. Because some of our secondary routes, we have hour-long secondary routes.
Let me just ask too, because I know that we renegotiate our transportation contract and that will come up again
When is that?
next year. So let's say we make these decisions, we make this decision, we set these routes with first student, and then we maybe choose a different transportation carrier. Are we gonna be able to find another transportation company that can hit these same guidelines? Because if we do this, I do not want to talk about this in 12 months again.
No.
You know, I mean, like, if we're gonna do this, it needs to be right.
Absolutely. They have a whole team they're located, where are they, South Dakota?
South Dakota First Planning Solutions,
And that's
all they do.
Yeah.
They run these scenarios, these mock scenarios and studies, if you will. Done several of them for us. They don't charge us anything.
So the fair thing is for each person to give 5 minutes.
No matter who's running the bus, the company.
Okay. To go with option B, the elementary gets 5 minutes, the secondary gets 5 minutes. And even though it got the least amount of votes,
Well, you're splitting the difference.
you're splitting the difference. And that's what compromise is all about, which this country hasn't seen in a while. So I'm making a motion, we accept option B.
I'll second.
Thank you, Lorelei. Thank you, Lindsay.
Can you scroll down one more time to show us what option B looks like?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So option B is 7:45, 2:45, 8:40, 3:40, 8:50, 3:50.
And I don't mean to be a stick in the mud, but can you restate your motion to include the times, just so we can have it for the record?
Yes. I move we approve option B, which has elementary starting at 7:45, high school starting at 8:40 a.m., and middle school starting at 8:50 a.m.
Thank you. Discussion. Not like we haven't had any.
Well, I would like to say that I hope that all of our patrons, our faculty, our staff understand that we as a board make this decision not insensitive to the impact that it's going to have on people. I mean, I've spent a lot of time, honestly, and I know everyone at this table has, but ultimately, I think each of us is committed when we asked to sit in a seat that we would make decisions based on what's best for the majority of our students and be financially responsible for the taxpayers' money. And so I just know that there's a lot of passionate, opinions on different sides of this issue, but I hope that people will appreciate the fact that we don't make this decision lightly. We don't discount the impact it's going to have on people, but we are committed to making decisions based on what's best for the majority of our students and patrons.
Other thoughts? Lori? Been kind of quiet over there. Anything to share?
I got some ringing in this ear and, against and for, and again, I'm with Ken. You got to weigh the overall, what's best for the majority of our kids in our district. And how do you fight against, the research that's been done for many years and sounds like nationwide.
To hear our faculty and staff say,
you have elementary
professional
teachers.
development time, additional time. We've heard that message from
Collaboration.
elementary schools, elementary staff, and I don't think we can discount that or discard it.
Well, and, again, the 3 pillars, learning, and our elementary teachers cannot collaborate, and they haven't been able to since, was that 03 that we went to these crazy,
Just before that.
and we want consistency, and I mean, it just keep, yeah. So, yeah.
Any other thoughts, ladies?
I mean, there's parents sitting up here too, so several of us are affected by the change as well, so.
This has been a tough one. This
I
one's
feel
been
the pain,
stressful.
Yeah.
This has been a stressful one.
We serve lots of different stakeholders.
Yes.
And it's difficult to balance the needs of the very different stakeholders that we serve.
Yeah.
This one's been tough.
That's what we're called to do.
One
Go
more
ahead.
thing to ponder. Are we doing our due diligence by taking the least
I think you can
voted
explain
upon
your position though.
by the
We-
community?
We like option C because it's really good for elementary and the voters on that side. Option A looks really good because that's what the secondary voted for the most. So we're meeting in the middle
In the
here.
middle, yeah.
We're
I mean, I
meeting
think
in the
when you
middle.
take those two, when the demographic groups that represented the two, option A and C are the
Voted for
two.
what was optimum
Right.
for them.
Right.
Best for but that's two different groups in the district, so I think the.
I mean, I feel good about being able to explain why we made that,
Right.
why we would pick
Compromise.
B.
I'll say that I appreciate, Brent, if we hadn't asked folks to identify themselves, and if you were just going A, B, and C, you'd say, well, just where they landed. But, when you look at that, and we had this very discussion, and I am completely fine with option, I know I recommended A, I am completely fine with option B, because it is, we talked about that, I had a hard time when it was the bottom vote getter to make that recommendation. So thank you guys for making the motion. Because I'm good, and it is 5 minutes both ways. And can we land
So
on that?
basically, we're compromising.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, elementary and secondary too. Is that the sweet, we talked about what is the sweet spot? Okay, I'm trying to find that, and I'm good with that, so.
No, I think they're all interesting options. They all have pros, they all have cons, like I mentioned earlier. There's no doubt about that. Scott mentioned, and this is a fairly large decision, very large decision for the district and the board to tackle, but commend the staff. You all have done a good job with this. You gave lots of opportunities for the community to provide input. I know different members around the table have been contacted in various different ways, and so we appreciate that. Always enjoy hearing from patrons. We want to hear what folks' thoughts are. I agree with Lorelei and Lindsay and other comments that I think B is a realistic compromise, and I think that's something that we should take up going forward. I'm certainly supportive of it. So if there's not any other comments, then we'll call for the vote.
Lindsay?
Yes.
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 Don't have to do a roll call.
I think I just-
I was going to say, or if you all are all right with it, then we can. Otherwise, I was just going to have you raise your arm, just make sure we record it correctly. So, but we've
halfway around.
started, so
Halfway.
just go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Rich.
Rich?
He's probably in a hearing by now.
Yeah, he had a bill on.
He had a bill.
Yep. So, okay, very good. All right. So the motion is adopted. Option B, or motion is passed, and option B is adopted. So, thank you all very much. Appreciate the discussion. Appreciate the comments. Moving on to new business, which is basically the Frank Underwood show.
It's that time of year. All right. Well, good evening.
Good evening.
I'm stressed just listening to you. I'm serious. Thank you very much, though. I'm proud to be part of this team. I mean, for us to debate 5 minutes one way or the other is just showing due diligence besides everything else that went on. But I'm just happy. All right, so we're going to start off with lawn care. I thought maybe this would make the snow go away, so we put it at the top of the list. Bias Lawn Care is our mowing service, and they do other things too, is clean leaves and brush and what have you. It's time to renew their contract for another year, and so I'm just asking your all's approval or recommendations. If we need to go to bid, I don't think that we do. We just went to bid last year, so I'm asking for your approval for a year extension on Bias Lawn Care service for this next year.
Move to approve.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Ken? Any discussion on that?
Do we have ongoing evaluation criteria for this kind of contract? I mean,
We do. It's in the contract. Last year, that was the contract bidding that we did through many lawn care services. And then this contract is 1 year and then a 3-year renewal afterwards. What we look at is what they did last year. Anytime during that 3 years, though, we can say, you know what, we're going to go to bid. We're not happy with the service that we have here and go forward. I'll have to say that these guys have done a really good job last year. They're accommodating. If we ask them not to mow at a certain time at this school or whatever, they change their schedule and do it for us. But
okay.
Good. I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion points? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. Contract's approved.
all right, we'll go one at a time here. Partial roof replacement. There's 2 separate roofs, and one's a smaller roof, and then there's a larger section with a rooftop unit that has failed. It's done. It's not going on anymore. So that is the alternate bid on this. Asking for approval for Watkins Roofing to replace the roof and rooftop unit at Cedar Hill Elementary. 2 sections of roof, not the whole roof. I'm sorry.
Look for a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Ken. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Scott. Discussion, questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Good. Contract's approved.
Okay. Similar thing up at North Elementary, no rooftop unit, 2 sections of roof. One's a large section on it's going to be the west side along Summit Drive, and then the one that's up close to the office area 2 sections of roofing. Watkins Roofing was a low bidder on this one as well. Asking for approval to move forward with this capital improvement and replacing 2 sections of roof at North.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Lindsay. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Again, that's contracts approved.
All right, one more or two more. This is Villa Lighting. We went and got proposals. They were the low proposal. All these proposals came within $100 of each other, which is pretty cool. So it just lets me know that this is a good figure. They were low to replace gym lighting in the gymnasium and all parking lot lighting to LED cost-saving lightings throughout the gym and all the exterior lighting as well. I'll just note that $20,000, this $21,000 is also a rebate that we did or potentially going to be receiving shortly. Some of it we've already received and the rest of it we'll receive later. So what we're investing is essentially $1,148 into $21,000 worth of lighting because of a rebate that we've gotten from other installations that we've done. But at this time to move forward, we do have to approve the full amount. So I'm asking for your approval to replace gym lighting and parking lot lighting at Lewis and Clark.
Need a motion?
Can I ask a question or make a
No, go
statement?
ahead.
So of the 3 bidders and vendors, Gray Bar's local, correct? They're out of Jeff City?
They're pretty large company.
Pretty
They're
large.
big.
They're
Butler
throughout the
Supply is Jeff City,
Mm-hmm.
and the one that we chose is out of St. Louis.
Villa Lightings has done other lighting for us, and is from what I understand, and they were the low proposed bid.
But
By $100?
Let's take
I
a
mean, like
look.
Butler Supply is $100 more.
Yeah, Butler was $101 more, and then the other one was about $1,000 more. Gray Bar.
Frank, do you have any experience with Butler? Are you familiar with that?
I do not. Now, I'm sure the other guys that have worked here longer than I have had experience.
So are we
Butler,
looking at-
I've used it First Student before. Gray Bar I've used before. First Student also for lighting.
Sure.
So was the only criteria the dollar figure?
The dollar figure was a low bid, yes, that's what we went by.
We have rules about what we can approve if it's local versus
It's not quantified, but we can choose local.
by $100.
Sure. There wasn't anything in the bid language that said specifically that it will be, you know, the decision will be locked in for.
Yeah, this wasn't anything that went out to bid.
Okay.
We just went
Just
out
wanna
and
make
showed
sure.
them what we
Okay,
had and
gotcha.
asked for proposals for
Good,
it.
so as long as we don't run afoul of anything, then my thoughts would be is, I mean, if you're talking about $100 difference, I
Stay
mean,
local.
that's decimal dust. I think we need to invest locally anytime we can.
I agree.
I was gonna look up how much they pay in property tax here.
Perfect, we can go back and take on the other one.
And I wanted to ask, what, it looks like we asked for some quantities and we scratched out to different quantities. Is that because we decided we didn't need 8 light bulbs somewhere?
Correct.
And we only need
That's the way
4 and-
that's the way I understood it when I asked him, is that they had their quantities incorrect on there.
Well, and
Back
that's,
and redid them.
I mean, that's another concern I have, is that we have a proposal there that has a lot of manual, lines through and numbers changed with no initials or anything. I personally am not comfortable with approving this document the way it is with all the handwritten notes and no confirmation of who made those changes.
That's fair enough.
What's the timeline, folks? Is this an item that you can bring back to us at the April meeting, or does it need to be, push comes to shove, done tonight?
Yeah, that's on the time.
No, the timing's fine, we can bring it back in April.
Okay.
We can go back and look at it and bring it back in April and give
Gotcha.
something that's a little cleaner looking and,
Sure.
and
Sure.
local.
Yeah.
You bet. I think that's fair.
I mean, if
You can
you're
avoid
saying that we're covered by approving the local vendor,
can
I'd
go
make a
to-
motion
I was gonna say, if
to
it's-
approve Butler Supply and award them the bid at $21,249.20.
Okay.
And I'd second it.
Thank you, Lori. Additional discussion, questions? Hearing none. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Good.
And
Thank you, Frank.
Butler then.
Butler.
That was your motion.
Local.
That was
Yeah.
your motion.
Sure.
Purchase.
Yes.
Yep.
And I'll make note of that for the future too.
Thank you. Well, I mean, for $100, let's keep the money
I
and the
agree.
work local.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that raises an additional question. I don't want to keep you from, from us moving forward, but, we had to talk in the past in terms of trying to come up with some kind of a format for making those types of decisions. How much can you exceed the lowest bid if it's a local vendor? So maybe something to revisit in the future, but yeah, I think anytime we can invest locally, we need to.
I think if you make us aware that there are other, bidders that are close, again, based on the scope of the project, then we, I think, need to have the opportunity to go with local.
Go with local.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we did, I'll just interject here, we had in our policy, previous district, 10%, that you would spend 10% more local. Then we decided we changed and had a sliding scale if it was up to, $100,000.
Depend on the number.
10% on a $10 million
9%, 8%, we had a sliding scale, and MSBA formatted that for us. So that's something we might look at down the road, because we would like to support local, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
So, yeah, Frank, if you'll just make a note of that, I appreciate it. You
Just
do
did,
a
and I
good job month
appreciate-
to month, and we appreciate the service that you give.
I appreciate the education.
Yeah, no,
I
not
really
at all,
do. It's good.
not at all. But yeah, I think that's just a note for all of us, is just to have the pros and cons there in addition, and especially if they're that close to Ken's point, to just let us know if we've got any history with those vendors, because if there's a reason that we should not do business with a particular firm, and we want to know that as well. So make the best decisions we can.
Sure.
Thanks.
Okay, got one more. Intercom system at Southwest Elementary, Tech Electronics, bid at $13,580. What we're trying to do is do at least one, if not more, intercom systems in each of our schools. They're failing. We did Cedar Hill last year, which was good. Tech Electronics also. So we're trying to put the same systems in the same schools. The next closest bidder wasn't even close to that. It was 20-some thousand, and a third proposal never came through. So I'm asking for approval for Tech Electronics to install an intercom system at Southwest Early Childhood Center this summer at $13,580.
Is there a motion? Thank you, Lori.
Second.
Thank you, Ken. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. Thank you, Frank.
All right, thank you guys.
Thanks, Frank.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Ms. Dana Deerhoff. Did I say that right? Is it Deerhoff or Deerhoff?
It's however you want to pronounce it, but Deerhoff is how I
Deerhoff.
pronounce it. I hear it both ways. We went out for bid to put a walk-in, it's a freezer, cooler, dry storage area combination for Callaway Hills. We did receive a $25,000 equipment grant from DESE that's funded by USDA. So we went out for bid. This being the first time I've kind of bid this type of equipment, I did ask for some assistance with Frank and John Moon, and with looking at the 3 bids we received, Ford Hotel Supply had the best option for us. They bid the exact product that we asked for, lots of details on what we were asking for and what we can expect and get in return. So I guess I'm asking for approval to go ahead with that, or do you have any questions?
Questions for Dana?
So the bid's 41,000, but we're getting 25,000 from DESE,
Yes,
so our net out of pocket's gonna be
16.
15 grand.
move to approve.
Thank you, Lorelei.
Second.
Thank you, Lindsay. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good.
Thank you.
I do have one question, I guess. So the grant that we got for this, have we considered looking at a similar grant for Nichols Career Center Culinary Arts Program for equipment like this?
It's National School Lunch funded through USDA for those purposes.
Okay. All right.
But there are enhancement grants through Career and Tech Ed,
Can't do it.
75-25, that they can
Ask him.
consider looking at.
Share between the 2 schools.
I-
We have,
Have we applied, or have we looked into the possibility of grant money for that?
so last month, when I was here, we talked about that we were under budget, and we had extra money, and we allocated that. That hasn't exhausted our list of still wants and needs. And so a culinary walk-in freezer is on that list, that if we get more money released to us, we we find out we're not spending contingency as we go along. So Sharon wrote into our grant for DESI for next year, that walk-in cooler freezer at Nichols. And if we don't have the money, we just won't do the project, but we have to get approval ahead of time. So we're going through the process to get that. And so it would be, I don't know if it's 50-50 or 75-25, because it's not all of it. And we have to knock out a wall. I mean, that type of construction, but the actual equipment will be covered. I think 75-25
Usually
by
they'll
the
say,
grant.
now they may trim it down and cut it to 65. I mean, they can, you may not get it all, but you can go forward and I say a good chance of not getting it.
So that is still something that we hope to be able to accomplish through our construction project.
Okay. You have a budget amendment for us, Jason?
I do. So we amend the budget as we get more information. We wrote the budget back in June, and we obviously know more today than we did then. We actually amended in November, and at that time, we were expecting to run a surplus of $2.1 million, and our ending fund balance is 26.3%. Remember, we had to phase in the levy, so we took part of the levy to operate the Capital City High School this year, because we couldn't take it because of the laws around voluntary rollback. So we knew we were going to run a very large surplus. So what we're asking for amendment tonight is to amend current and delinquent property taxes is a big one. Something that we know more now is we get most of those collections by the end of February. And so last year was interesting. So the calculation is very simple. It's your assessed valuation times your tax rate, and that'd be nice if it was over there, but then it's by a collection rate. And so the assessor gets some of our money, the collector gets some of our money because they're doing that work for us. And then some people don't pay. And so historically, you just look at what do we average collect, and that's what we use in budgeting. Well, last year our tax rate went up and our collection rate went down significantly, and people have to pay eventually, because if not, their house gets foreclosed on, their car, whatever. So those taxes will eventually get paid. So we used a lower collection rate based on what we had last year, and now through the end of February the collection rate is going back towards normal. So when you have a $1.2 billion of assessed valuation, just a 0.2% difference in the collection rate turns into a very big number. So it's increasing our current and delinquent property taxes by $400,000. Interest income, I'm finally right that interest rates went up after being wrong for many years. But we have fund balances, rates have gone up, and so we're collecting more interest, so increasing interest income by $200,000. State transportation revenue, Mike Reed mentioned that the governor's budget for next year has an increase. The House has a little bit smaller budget. This year, the budget that passed had an increase in the state transportation formula. But for years, the budget had increases, and the first sign of any trouble with the budget, it was a withhold. Actually, one year they passed the budget in June, and July 1st, we had that full increase withheld from us. So when I wrote the budget in June, I didn't feel comfortable that we would actually see that money. Here we are in February, it's looking like we're actually going to see that money, and it's turning out to be $150,000 of additional money. And even, like Mike said, even with that increase in transportation revenue, that formula is underfunded by over $200 million. We're getting the same funding this year, if we get that we got in 1988. And so I'm guessing a bus, Frank, costs more today than it did in 1988.
Gas.
Coca-Cola costs more today than it did in 1988.
So, as he mentioned about other programs that take money from education and put them in other areas, I think our message would be that I think we should first fund our promises. We're required to provide transportation, so funding that $200 million would, and it affects districts differently. It affects us a lot. We have 230 square miles, so we have a much larger transportation budget than smaller, more urban districts. ECSE revenue, this was actually a mix up on my part, but when we added on to Southwest Early Childhood for the early childhood special ed section, we were receiving $206,000 a year in reimbursement from DESI over an 8-year period to pay us that back. So we got almost $1.7 million of that construction cost was reimbursed to us through the Early Childhood Special Ed program. Last year was the last year we were getting that back, and I didn't remove that from the budget. So removing that revenue, and then ECSE is a 100% reimbursable program by law. So we do a final expenditure report, and the next year we get 100% of that reimbursed to us. So the FER has been approved. We know what we were going to get. So we're going to get more in the operating portion of Early Childhood Special Ed and less from the capital improvement part. And it's a net of $93,000 less dollars. And then we also had another grant that expired, but we had a small school-based social worker grant that expired, so removing that revenue. So overall, it's very good news. It's a net increase in revenue of $634,000. On the expenditure side, things look like we would expect them to look right now. And this whole amendment on the expenditure side is moving things that we had budgeted originally as equipment, and once we're actually purchasing them, they're really a supply. DESE has a threshold that if an individual item costs $1,000 or more, it's equipment. If it costs $999 or less, it's a supply. So walking that fine line, and so moving that money where we're actually going to spend it. It's a overall net zero change in expenditures. It's just moving it from those funds. So after those amendments, this is what the fund balances look like. And the major thing is it moves up from 2.1 million to 2.6 million, and our fund balances go up to 26.8%. So very good news.
Very healthy budget, Jason.
Good.
Anytime those little numbers are not surrounded in parentheses, it's a good thing, right? A whole lot.
It's in black and it's not in red. and
That's
there's
right.
no parentheses.
There you go. Questions for Jason on the budget amendment?
Do you need action from us?
Please. We need to approve it.
Okay. Move to approve.
Thank you, Ken.
Second.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Jason.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. Budget amendment is approved. Thanks, Jason. On to the preliminary budget.
So the preliminary budget, I'm going to just talk more about how our budget works. So there was a piece of legislation that passed last year that changed how we're able to meet and confer with our staff. We used to have a really good relationship with MNEA and MSTA, and before I would come to you with a recommendation like this, I would meet with representatives from MNEA, I would meet with representatives from MSTA, we would have discussion, and at the end of as long as I've been here, we've come with approval. But a law passed last year that defined them as labor organizations going forward. If they were to meet and they represented a group of people, they became a labor organization through law. They're still developing the rules and regulations around that, but it put a huge amount of paperwork, reporting, possible penalties on these people if we meet and actually do meet and confer like we have in the past. So to get around that, we had an open invite to everyone in the district to come and learn about our budget and talk about what you're going to see today. And so representatives from MNEA and MSTA were there, but we had some other people. And so I just spent some time just talk about how our overall budget works. And, our revenues come from mostly three main pieces. And for us, about half of our budget comes from local property taxes. State funding makes up almost 23%, Prop C is almost 9%. So you have over 80% just from those three sources. So if you can get those three sources right, you've got 80% of the revenues done. Then what's left, it all repeats itself as well. We had federal revenue, almost 10%, and 91% of that federal revenue comes from title programs, IDEA, and food service. So as we serve free and reduced lunch meals, we get federal reimbursement for those meals. Then there's also interest income, food sales, student activities, county revenues make up the remaining part of that. And then our expenses are also very concentrated. School districts across the state, somewhere 78 to 80% of their expenses come in salaries and benefits. And ours would be a little bit less. because we contract our transportation, which we're paying a purchase service, but a lot of that goes to salaries for people that do service to us that if we operated would raise that percentage. And the same thing that when we contract out our subs, that's called a purchase service for us, but it's really going to salaries and benefits. So what's left after that, there's really not a lot of discretionary money in the budget. There's another 10% that goes to utilities, our transportation contract, food supplies, subs. So there's not a lot, and all of it repeats itself. We're going to do all of this in one form or the other. And so that's why the order tonight was to amend the current budget, because to make next year's budget accurate, we need to make this year's budget as accurate as possible. And then we're going to see what's going to be different. And so that's what you're going to see on the next slides. So here's a recap of the slide that we're right now projecting this year to end at 26.8%. So now what's going to be different next year? If everything repeated itself, which we expect it to in some fashion, but if everything repeated itself again next year, just like it did this year, we would run another $2.6 million surplus. That fund balance would go up significantly, the percentage. So what's different revenue-wise? Well, property taxes. We're going to receive property taxes again next year. So we have to figure what kind of growth are we going to get in the assessed valuation that's currently on the books, which would be new construction, changes in personal property. And then every odd numbered year, so this is 2019, is a reassessment year. So the assessor's job is to go and look at all the property currently on the books and say, has it changed in value? Has it gone up? Has it gone down? So we're expecting, the economy here is good. We would expect somewhat of a positive reassessment. We expect some, and we have historical data to show what we normally see in new construction. So right now, estimating an increase of $800 and almost $56,000 in property taxes over what we received this year. State aid, as Mike Reed mentioned, the governor's budget has full funding of the formula. The sneak peek of what the House is looking at calls for full funding of the formula. It's kind of gotten to be a third rail that it's really important to make sure that we're fully funding the formula. So I would be surprised if that doesn't happen. That means another $600,000 in revenue. Prop C, that is the statewide sales tax dedicated for education. It's collected statewide and distributed to us on a per pupil basis. The state's economy is doing well, so we think our amount per pupil will go up, but it's also based on your prior year student count. So it's going to be based on this year's student count, and this is the first year we get to count our preschool students through the foundation formula. So we'll get Prop C money for them next year. So those two things combined help call for the increase of $250,000. County stock insurance is the oddball revenue that we get. We get more of this than any other district in the state. It is unpredictable. So just being conservative right now, saying we're going to get less than what we received this year. There are other revenues to think about. State aid or transportation aid. You heard there's a 5% in the state budget, or in the House budget, a 10% in the governor's budget. It's too early. I don't really feel good saying we're going to get more money there. Interest income, interest rates have been going up. The reason that I'm not putting an increase on there now is our banking bid is up at the end of this year, and I feel like we have pretty favorable rates. And I'm not sure that even though rates will be higher, our terms may not be as good. So we'll know more as we go through that banking bid. So just with these things, we expect to have all the revenue received this year plus another $1.4 million. So then how do we spend that $1.4 million? So the first thing that we want to make sure that we do is operate the salary schedule. And so how we do that is take an average increase for a teacher in both experience and education, it's 1.8%, give a similar 1.8% for all other classes of employees. And in this one, we have done some things with the stipend schedule. So there's a little more than normal on here for the stipend schedule. There's $50,000. There's the $100,000 that we traditionally move people when people move over for education. And then the benefits associated, so that's $1 million for all those raises. Add on the benefits with that, so it's almost $1.2 million to operate the salary schedule. So then other changes, again, this year, we're looking to have no change in our rates for health insurance, and our benefits are not changing as well.
How many years does that make, Jason?
I thought you might ask that, and I meant to look that up today, but it's several, and we've actually had
Is it
a,
9? I think it's 9.
I think it's been every year I've been on the board.
and it was prior to that, and we actually had a reduction of 8%, I think, 2 years ago.
Yes.
PSRS peers rate change, it hasn't changed since, that one hasn't changed since 2013, but it is always a possibility that if things go haywire in the markets, it is a promise that has been made. And so the rates have already been set for next year. They're not changing for next year, and I don't expect them to change anytime soon, but I keep that on there because it is always a possibility.
Jason, speaking of that,
Yep.
Mike didn't talk about it, but isn't
Right.
there a bill, has the bill about,
Forcing all new
I was
hires
gonna
into a
say,
defined
taking,
contribution.
impacting this, is that made it to the floor, or is it made out of committee?
Not even, hasn't had a hearing in committee yet, but there is a bill that would force all new hires into a defined contribution, and that would cause the contribution rates for everyone else to go up considerably, because the system is built on dozens of assumptions, and so one of the assumptions is so many people are going to retire, and so many people are going to be rehired, and these contributions are built into those assumptions. So if these contributions go away, the promise to all the other people doesn't go away. So,
But that, I just, he didn't mention it, but I just wondered if that bill had made it anywhere.
right.
It is worth noting that Governor Parsons has made some public comments really clear a couple of times that he feels very strongly that the
He would
teacher's
veto it.
retirement system is their retirement system, and
Okay.
he's not in
Good.
support of anything that would change that.
Good.
So what's changing, so we might have someone that teaches 4th grade and they retire, and we're still gonna fill that position. Someone's gonna come back in that classroom and teach 4th grade, but the way the salary schedule works, people are retiring down here on the bottom right part of our schedule, and they're filled with positions that are up higher, more center. So there's a savings when we have that, and historically we see between $300,000 and $400,000. Our retirements are down a little bit compared to other years, so we're showing a savings of $300,000 just to refilling positions just with people at different spots on the schedule. Approval of this budget, I'm asking for $175,000, and we'll come back with what those salary schedules actually look like. But in November, we passed an increase to the minimum wage, and even though we're exempt from minimum wage could go above what we pay, and we're not violating the law. But currently, our wage is $2.05. Our lowest wage is $2.05 above minimum wage, and it's there for a reason, because we want to get workers who are demand to be paid more than minimum wage. So we don't want to fall behind, and you'll probably see an increase for several years because that minimum wage phases in. But we want to stay ahead of that, and we want to address our lower paid salary schedules. Brenda did a survey of summer school with our staff, and one of the things came back was for us to evaluate summer school pay. And so I reached out to several surrounding schools, and our pay is better than all but Columbia's, and it's exactly the same as Columbia's today. So you could be fine in saying, well, our pay is okay, but we haven't raised summer school pay in 5 years. It's been the same thing for 5 years. So with this budget recommending a 10% increase in summer school pay, if we have the exact same staff earning 10% more, it'd be almost $15,000.
So what do you earn when you work summer school, Jason? What does an average teacher earn?
$3,000? I think it's $3,000.
$3,300
next year.
Good math there. Absolutely.
Did you do that math in your head?
I did.
Wow.
That's
I'm
why he's
impressed.
superintendent, Lori.
I'm scared.
So the next line is the 7 middle school teachers, the $412,000 that was mentioned earlier tonight. about going from 4 to 5 core. And so this does a lot of things. Not only does it get more emphasis on reading and writing, just English in general, but it reduces our class sizes across the board. So the middle school scheduling is pretty weird, but they have 4 teams and there's 3 grades. And so if you split those 4 into 5, even your math classes get smaller, your science classes get smaller, your social studies classes get smaller. And so what we've done to get around that in some of our larger classes is to add half teams. So we had a half team where went and had one teacher for math and science, and they had another teacher for English and social studies, so they weren't with a full team. So just to try and get those class sizes down a little bit, this is going to get all of our class sizes down. And we're doing that and try to explain that we're basically adding 18 ELA positions. We're reducing 9 FTEs from those extra teams, and then the 2 reading teachers. We're going to be doing more reading throughout the day with more students with this model. The next line, as we're going to do more reading and writing, we're advocating for a middle school reading specialist to be split between the 2 middle schools. We have some other of these positions throughout the district, but this person would be dedicated to the 2 middle schools. And so we're able to use Title IIA funds to fund it. And currently we have some professional development that we're purchasing from ICLE. We're going to reduce that expenditure and fill that hole because it's an amount of money that we're allocated to spend. So it has a net 0 cost to the budget. It's moving from a purchase service to ICLE to funding this position. The next section is in our special education department. I think last month we approved the 5 positions that are listed first, the 2 elementary resource, the 2 middle school behavior, and the high school transition. And with this budget, there are 2 more positions, the 2 compliance coordinators. Compliance in the special education realm has grown immensely. And if you have more questions about that, I know Bridget and Brian would be happy to talk about it, but we have vetted it as an AC and all agree that it's definitely something that is needed. As Bridget has been going through and evaluating the special education department, every para had to be, there was a form that they had to fill out to justify all the paras. And we found at least 10 paras that we're adding more certified services, and so we're not reducing services, but we can do as good or better and not have to fill those 10 positions. And there may be more when we come back. So then transportation, our contract with First Student, next year is our last renewal. It has a built-in 3% rate increase. So if we do all of our rates the same, add 3%, it's $110,000. The schedule change that we just approved earlier, there's the $150,000 savings. And then utilities, this is on our current stuff. A 10% rate increase would be $220,000. And the next slide shows the expenditure changes next year associated with Capital City High. And so this is my 19th year writing budgets. This one is by far the most difficult. There are just so many moving parts. And so we still just have a placeholder of $1 million up there for new positions and stipends. We're still working through that. We're going to come back, but for this, you're not really allocating that money. We will come back to you each position that we need approved. But just to give you an idea of what the budget's going to look like. As we open Capital City High School, we have more insurance, mowing, activities, both supplies and purchase services associated with our activities. Custodial maintenance supplies, that's an addition of $400,000 for those areas. As we do more, double our activities, we're going to be busing students outside of this routes. So a $150,000 increase associated with activities, and then now heating, cooling, and lighting, a 300,000 square foot building. is another $210,000. So all of those things added in is an increase in expenditures of $3.7 million.
Jason, do we expect to realize any savings at Jefferson City High School? And if so, have we put the pencil to that?
Not really, because we're still going to have Simonson on board. I would think where our savings would come from would be less utilization at Simonson. We have more square footage coming on at Jefferson City High School at all, so we will have some savings, but then having more square footage as well. So next year with the transition year, we'll watch Simonson, and we're going to be using it still without a gym at Capital City High School when we open. We're still going to be going there, I'm sure, for some use, but there should be savings. So all of that added together, so this year you see the 2.6 million surplus, 26.8 million. We're adding 1.4 million in revenues, taking away 3.7 million in new expenses, not doing anything different with the transfers. So next year we will still run a surplus, but it's only $316,000. So then, my favorite slide.
Least favorite slide.
David Luther's least favorite slide. So we know we're budgeting it. We've said that everything we're doing this year is going to repeat itself next year. I'm pretty sure it's going to repeat itself the year after that, and the year after that, and the year after that. So not only do we have to see can we afford this year, but can we afford next year and then out. And so you see this is what we just went through. Next year is a non-reassessment year. My pointer isn't working, but still can't see that. Okay, so in the column to the right of the yellow one, so you see a 3.4% increase in current delinquent property taxes. Remember, next year, in the 1920 year, we're not increasing our tax rate, but in the 2021 year is when the other 10 cents of our operating levy goes on. So that's why that goes up so much in a non-reassessment year. Prop C is going up a little bit. Nothing other local, nothing county, state increasing a little bit. So an increase in revenues of 2.2% next year, 1.4% the following year, because 21-22 is a reassessment year. And the next year only a 1% increase in our revenues, because our biggest revenue source is current delinquent property taxes. You see it's only a 0.8% increase because it's what we have plus new construction and changes in personal property. Then on the expenditure side, as we know next year we're not going to have all of our staff that we need at Capital City High School. We're going to continue to add staff as we bring more classes on to Capital City High School. So trying to phase that in next year, or in 2020, 2021, then it's showing only normal increases, a 1.8% increase, and then some savings from retirement. So that's the 1.5%. Not expecting any changes in health insurance going forward. Other benefits going up. Purchase services, that's showing an increase due to the transportation contract. Utilities going up. So using big blocks of data and making assumptions, you can see that we're in very good shape, that our fund balance percentage is in the 26%, and we really have a goal that it's in the 20%. So there's just so many moving parts right now, it's hard to get really aggressive with a whole lot until we get more things figured out. But I feel very confident that giving the 1.8% now, that's why we do this in March, because we issue teacher contracts before April 15th. We like to get those out, so like to get that approved. And so as we do all the time, when we get to June, we'll have more information, and hopefully we can do more with salaries at that time. But at this time, this would be my recommendation.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Lorelei.
Second.
Thank you, Ken. Other questions for Jason? So Jason, I assume that, like you said, there's a lot of moving parts. I think we all recognize that. So, but I'm also cognizant of the fact that the board's had that 20% fund balance target for quite some time. And so
just as a taxpayer, when I see 26, 27%, like the natural question I think folks ask is, you know, where is that, how are we going to utilize that cash? Where is that going to go? So if my assumption is correct, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think what future boards would expect to see is that as the picture becomes clear around Capital City in terms of, you know, the number of staff, the expenditures there, then you all will deploy that those extra funds. And we will see those fund balances come back more into line with what the board has set in
Right.
terms of target, right?
If you go back in history, we were in the 27%, and there was a period of time where that was spent down to where you see in 15, 16, it got to 22.1%, and there was a plan for it to continue.
Right.
And so building that back up now as we work through this, most definitely the goal would be to bring that back down to the 20% range.
But we were limited on when we could ask for that additional raise, and we had to ask then, so we would have the money to pay the expenses, because we can't ask next year. So it
Exactly.
was
Yep.
purposeful that we'd be up that high, knowing that we're gonna spend that down now this year.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I'm not, in my comments were more directed towards the out years, not
Right.
so much next year. but
Right.
Just, you know, looking to make sure that we continue to be responsible stewards like we have been, and you guys have done a good job with that, so.
But we've discussed that at the finance committee, what our
Have you?
long-range plan is.
Yes.
Good, great, good. Okay, do we have a motion and a second? Any other comments? You're good. All in favor of approving the preliminary budget, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good, prelim budget's approved. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you, Jason.
Last item of business is the favorite one of Lorelei, or if you want to have Lori do it.
This big copy.
Motion to suspend open to enter into closed meeting by roll call vote pursuant to chapter 610.021 of the revised statutes of Missouri, section 1, legal actions, causes of action or litigation involving public governmental body, 2, leasing, purchasing, or sale of real estate, 3, hiring, firing, disciplining of or promoting or particular employee, 13, individually identifiable personnel records, and 14, records which are protected from disclosure by law.
I hear a second.
Second.
Thank you, Lindsay. You've gotten very good at that, Lorelei.
Yeah, but that's wrong.
I'm surprised you don't have it memorized by now.
That is wrong.
This one, we do need a roll call vote, please.
Lindsay. Yes. Lorelei.
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Lori.
Yes.
Ken.
Yes.
Yes,
Very good, folks. 10-minute recess. Reconvene back here.
10 minutes.
10 minutes.